Hi, I am Vishani Lukman Pillay from South Africa, Johannesburg. And I'm here today because I have a deep passion for educating young individuals. And when I say educating, I don't just mean academically, I mean in a holistic approach and practically as well. A bit of a background about me. I hold a master's degree in science, and I am currently the center director of an education center that provides extra lessons for remediation and enrichment purposes. I really love learning new ways to connect to my students as well as researching trends in the learning environment. Thus, I'm so excited to be part of the summit, to not only partake and speak for it, but to also just get to learn new things and get to take it back home to my little education hub. Okay, so to start, I would just like to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking on trends in inclusive learning. I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to be placed in a center that really focuses on inclusive learning, whereby all students, and I really mean all students, no matter what, regardless of the challenges, are placed in an appropriate learning program with various support structures and interventions that are specific to them. A few topics that I would like to touch on today is knowing the learner's skills and abilities, the physical learning environment, the teacher's role, and hybrid learning. Okay, let's begin. Knowing the learner's skills and abilities. As our center is all about inclusive learning, it is important that we get to know our learner from the very get-go. They are, of course, the starting point. I mean, they're the stars of our show. So we start by getting to know the learner on a one-to-one basis. So something unique and rare about this particular learner. And then we subsequently do an initial assessment. We test their skill levels by going back 3 grades or 3 levels behind to really determine exactly where their difficulties have begun and which concepts they struggle with. In this way, we take in the students back to their basics. I firmly believe that if the foundation is strong, we can start teaching advanced concepts through the years and through the grades, and then nothing can tumble down if the foundation is in fact strong. So we basically have to play a catch up and keep up game. And this does take some juggling from both the students and the teachers. Another thing that we make sure that we test and teach is all the cognitive levels of thinking. We cannot just focus on cognitive level 1, for example, which is what you see is what you get, almost like a copy and paste scenario. So, for example, that I can give is, let's say the textbook says the 7 colors of the rainbow are this, this, and that. And when the student gets examined, they simply have to list red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And as you can see, this is a pretty simple way, but it is not the only way that a student is tested, and it's not the only way that the curriculum works. So we need to focus on the other cognitive levels, such as cognitive level 2, which is the practice and application of work. So here we do a lot of drill work in a progressive manner so that the student is really exposed to various different ways that a question can be asked. And when they're examined, and it's a tricky question because that's how exams are created, they can simply apply the knowledge or the tools that they have practiced. Cognitive level 3 now is the out of the box thinking. So almost like problem solving, creative writing, and the ability to just come up with your own opinion. And this is often challenging, and students often say to me, but I don't know this. The teacher didn't teach this. It's not in the textbook. And indeed, it isn't what the teacher teaches, but rather the teacher facilitates the students to formulate their own thoughts and opinions through exposure, exposure, exposure. And obviously, we always say reading is important. So the more that the student reads, the better. Once this initial assessment is complete, we now use this useful information to build up a tailored and individualized program that is, of course, subject to constant change throughout the year. The next step we do is we discuss the result, the expectations, and the goals with the guardian or the parent. But we make sure that the learner is part of this process from start to the end. And the reason why we do this is we're trying to teach the skill of independence, that the student steers, controls, and drives their own academic journey. This is where we also inquire about any other personal relevant information about that particular learner, so that all that confidential information is shared with their respected teachers in order to really personalize and innovate the learning experience of that individual. It is really great that there's this transparency between all the parties involved, because in the current world that we live in, there's just so much more awareness placed on understanding learner difficulties such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD. And as teachers, we can then place more emphasis on providing solutions and particular tools that can be used to really help this particular learner. Once we have all that information, the tutor then prepares their lesson plan and it adjusts on a weekly basis based on the learner's needs and changes. And what happens is ongoing learning occurs, and after a period of time, and I say a period of time because every student learns at different paces, every student learns at different rates. After a particular period of time, a reassessment is conducted and a progress report is concluded. And once we have this, new expectations and goals are set. And the learning continues in this consistent loop. It is very important that throughout this entire process, that our tutors, our teachers, make sure that they're building the learner's confidence all the time. The language that we use is positive reinforcement, and we make a pretty big deal over the smallest of smallest accomplishments. Sometimes it is the smallest things like, for example, the tone in the voice of a teacher, or the eye contact that the teacher makes with the student, or simply just showing a lot of excitement and energy for that child. So we have to have other tools. And another tool that we have is a wall of excellence, where we portray the learner's worksheets or the work done, whether it is just simple progression or major excelling, we have to put that up. It is significant that all our students get this recognition at least once. You know, often a struggling student can really get lost in their shortcomings. And thus, we really need to promote that the student starts this thing of self-praise, where they self-praise their small victories all the time. What we do is we really focus on praising the effort and not only the success. The environment. Just as we create a great environment and culture in the workplace, we should create the same for a learning environment in schooling systems. We have to ensure that we have a safe, warm, and friendly place for our learners. Each classroom in our center has a small number of students and no busy posters all over the show and untidiness. And this aids in less distractions and more productivity. The next thing that we do is we arrange the teacher and the learners in a way that facilitates learning, as opposed to the general classroom with the students sitting in rows and the teacher in front with the whiteboard. As the digital platform has grown, us teachers have had to think of ways to be facilitators in the classroom. We need to evolve into a position where we not only assist our students to understand to learn, but teach them to enjoy and love learning, and teach them how to discover and understand the information in front of them. The teacher has to create more rhythm in the class to lessen anxiety by having clear intentions and structure and instructions for that particular class, with important milestone dates and timed activities to really avoid monotony and boredom in the classroom. The teacher has to essentially create a very streamlined process. Another thing that we do with our students is we allow flexible seating. So even if a student wants to sit on the floor or outside in the garden for a particular activity, we allow that flexibility. We have adjusted our classroom environment to be aligned to the 4 C's of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. The teacher's role. As a team at our center, we truly believe that we have to be a high performance team in order to really achieve quality inclusive learning. We cannot drop the ball at any point. Just like a team at the pit stop at Formula One, and that's what we always think of, we are all dependent on each other to ensure success. We have to constantly keep up and maintain the quality of education. We choose teachers that are not only qualified in their subject, but they know the ins and outs of their subject. So they do not read the textbook in this box type manner. Also, they have to enjoy their subject to a point where they can deliver and innovate their teaching methods in a non-restrictive way. We have to be flexible and have completely different modes and approaches to the delivery of education to really maximize student learning. For me personally, the big one is investing in creating a rapport with that student. I've seen it work. We have to really walk the path with our learners. And the more that the teacher can connect to the learner outside of that academic framework, the more a teacher can cater their teaching styles to that unique individual. A teacher needs to be honest and view their students as equals. Teachers have to find new and exciting ways to transfer knowledge and skills to their learners. The transfer of skills need to be done with various different tools and resources, utilizing all the sensory outputs such as visual, kinesthetic, or audio, depending on that particular time, on that particular student, and that particular concept. Another aspect to education is teaching our learners the soft skills, such as critical thinking, problem solving, people management, teamwork, leadership, creativity, and above all, emotional intelligence. The thing is, their future employees and their future projects are seeking these type of skills. Teachers that can create quality learning formulas in this way will honestly better equip their students for their respected future. Lastly, the most important one, the teacher needs to value the success of their learner. The number one priority of a teacher is to really get their student invested in their learning journey, to ultimately sort of create a self-sustained progress system. The teacher needs to attain the skills of listening attentively to each and every one of their students. The teacher's role is really significant, and thus I touched on these few topics because the seed that the teacher plants now will be the fruitful result of the future. Hybrid learning. To us, hybrid learning became extremely important during the unprecedented times of COVID. We were really thrown in the deep end, but it really showed us all how actually creative and open-minded we were. Yes, there were like some major shortfalls and some challenges, but we were able to create a digital space with different geological spaces. We were all just really pushed to new heights, and I think we all feel that that is only going to expand in the years to come. What we had was we had remote at home learning, apologies. We had online learning tools and blended learning. Since our students and teachers became more familiar and confident in virtual learning, it was pivotal that teachers had to focus more than ever on the human interaction and find really interesting ways to do that. It became apparent that hybrid learning was not going to fall away. In fact, the tools that was created during COVID are really going to stay to capitalize and optimize learning. Tools such as the online whiteboards, discussion boards, video chats, audio and video feedback on homework assignments, to name a few. This all really aided in the diversifying of teachers' methodologies. With our online tools, we also utilize this exciting thing called gamification. These were online educational games which promoted healthy competitiveness, and it was just so effective to keeping students engaged during a very troublesome time. We knew that we were dealing with the selfie generation, and thus our institution had to ensure that the online tools that we were using were colorful, stimulating, modern, and up-to-date. One of the great advantages was that we were promoting a sustainable environment, as some of the online tools that we use meant less printing and less paper, and thus less effects on the environment. This is actually not a learning trend, but rather a priority as the planet calls out to us for sustainability. We continue to use these blended learning approaches of computer and written work to improve our center's footprint. When it comes to blended learning, we would like to see our Department of Education make more use of digital technology, robotics, gamification, and even esports to become more part of the co-curriculum, to include more and more of the learner's interests and hobbies, to really make learning fun, which it essentially should be. We'd also like to see artificial intelligence added to the classroom. Now, this will really add a completely different dynamic to learning in an engaging and experimental way. This type of technology will allow our students to really step out of the classroom and explore the world from a distance. And this will be especially useful and beneficial to those that have restricted access. In a country, however, that has a huge need for affordable, accessible, and quality education, we cannot discard the brick and mortar classrooms due to our limited resources, internet infrastructure, and costs, as well as our population growth. However, as a nation, we can start small by researching, learning, investing, funding, and implementing all these alternative solutions in the digital space. This needs to be explored further and further and further, and we cannot give up. Instead of only having access to new and innovative concepts through textbooks, students need to be able to experience them through evolved interactions and virtual spaces. And this will indeed help them after school in their selected careers. It is estimated that as many as 80% of all future jobs in South Africa require technology, science, engineering, and maths, which is called STEM. And the South African government has started working on solving these shortfalls here through hands-on practical learning for our youth. Interactive learning experiences aided by the digital platform is a must to achieve the desired learning outcomes. This is where we're going to really need the parents' assistance, because we need the parents and the guardians to help assist the students develop a healthy and safe relationship with the digital world so that they become more confident and more motivated explorers. Lastly, I would like to end off with this simple yet very powerful quote by Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It is such a prominent and notable quote that we cannot simply ignore its practicality. As leaders in the education industry, it is our key role to promote change in education as and when it evolves. In a country with a tough economy and a really high unemployment rate, the demand of quality education is just skyrocketing. And as the world is changing, we have to break away from the norms and the traditional schooling systems. Our students need a holistic education system that creates academic learning, practical learning, and strong leadership development. We really just have to be bold enough to jump into these alternative ways of teaching our future leaders. Thank you.